Welcome to Breakthrough Success. I'm your host, Marc Guberti, founder of the Content Marketing Plaza, bringing you 3 new episodes each week where I and top-level guests teach you how to take your business to the next level and achieve your breakthrough. And before we jump into today's episode, let me ask you a quick question. How much would your life change if you could make 6 figures from your content? Imagine being able to quit your 9-to-5 job, do what you love for a living, and spend more time with your family. That's what we help our students do at the Content Marketing Plaza, an 8-week program that will help you build your way to 6 figures via your content. You can learn more about the Plaza by heading over to contentmarketingplaza.com, which will be in the show notes. All right, let's jump right back into the episode. One of the things about building a business, going through the continuous grind, is that some days they're just going to be better than others. And there are some days where we can feel really beat up at the beginning of the day, or maybe we woke up late and that's putting us out of funk. But there is a way where we could turn our entire day around and bring back that positive energy. And if you turn each of your days around, you effectively turn your life around in the long-term process. So today's guest who will be talking with us about this today, he is the CEO and lead developer of the Focuster app, which is designed to boost your productivity. He also mentors teams so that organizations can realize their visions more quickly with fewer errors and less stress. Today's guest has been on the Content Marketing Success Summit and the Productivity Virtual Summit. So I'm sure he's going to give us an incredible experience on the Breakthrough Success podcast. So who exactly is this mystery guest? Well, today's guest for episode 311 of the Breakthrough Success podcast is none other than Jordan Baker. Jordan, it is such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Hey, Marc, thank you so much for having me on. I want to help everyone who's listening today have a breakthrough of their own.
Jordan, that is a really awesome message. That is a really awesome goal for this episode. We're definitely going to give it to them. So we've got so much to cover. First, let's talk a little bit about you, about your journey. So I know you've got the Focuster app, which people can find over at Focuster.com. So can you just talk a little bit about that background and what the app does?
Yeah, so Focuster is a productivity and focus and management tool. It basically is like having a 24/7 personal assistant that manages your schedule. You tell it what you want to do, when you want to do those types of things, and it builds a schedule for you automatically so that you can actually execute on the things that you intend to do and recover more quickly when you get distracted. It can dramatically 2x or even 10x your productivity depending on the type of habits that you may be engaging with right now.
Jordan, that is a great breakdown of the app, and I'm sure a lot of people could really use something that just makes their scheduling so much easier and really optimizes the schedule as well. Because, I mean, with a bad clarity with scheduling, you could really start a day off the rails, and I feel like this does happen to a lot of people, whether it's you wake up late, you miss a meeting, or you're just not feeling it when you wake up. So I'm wondering if we could go right into how exactly can we recover when the day seems like it's off to a bad start or even potentially lost?
Right. Okay. Well, this is a great topic. It's something that I've actually had to teach myself over many years because I, as an entrepreneur, I don't know if every entrepreneur feels this way, but I think there's a lot. Like, I love to get things done, but I don't like. There's a lot of times, let's just put it this way, where I don't like structure. I don't like rules. In fact, I want to break them. I want to push them as far as they can go. I want, and it applies to all areas of my life, business and work and play. I guess business and work are the same things, but anyway, so my point is with the structure is that there's often times where, maybe I'll stay up too late. Actually, there's a study that showed that intelligent and successful people tend to stay up late, party a lot, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, wow.
But anyways, let's not get off the rails on that one. So I often wake up in not often these days, but I have often woken up in a state where like I really need to get on top of things. I need to be present. I need to be alert. I need to be focused. I need to be productive, even if I didn't get much sleep, even if something's going on in my life that may be affecting me emotionally, right? And this could be something you're feeling anxious about. Maybe you submitted some kind of proposal, you're waiting for a response, or maybe it's in your personal life. Maybe you broke up with somebody and this is dragging at you. So how do you start to transform this stuff? And a lot of these things actually boil down to feelings, emotions, and it's something that's not talked about as often in the business world. And it's really critical because as an individual, as a human being, your state is what is going to determine the kind of results that you're getting, and your emotions are a huge part of your state. Okay. So the first thing that I do when I wake up, and if I'm not feeling, and this is something I need to do consciously, it's I have to consciously check in and say, how am I feeling right now? What am I noticing? Sometimes this ends up being some kind of journaling session, which sounds more complicated than it is. I just get a blank piece of paper and I just write down anything that I'm worried about, anything that feels off, anything that's just in my mind. And the second thing that I do is once I've started to notice what I'm feeling, I also kind of try to see where I feel it in my body. I do a series of movement exercises, whether it is yoga or there's other things as well, such as Qigong, which is, in essence, it's related to Tai Chi, and it is kind of like a Chinese yoga. I know some people will get mad at me for saying that, but Qigong is amazing. It's amazingly gentle and subtle at transforming your energy, and anybody can do both yoga and Qigong with the right teacher and the right advice from their doctor. I feel like that's important to say. So as soon as I start to do that, I'm starting to move the energy in my body. Even if I'm tired, and even if I only spend 5 minutes doing this, it can start to make a huge difference. Another thing that's in my tool belt is meditation. So, and that also might sound more complicated than it needs to be. Meditation can be as simple as just sitting in whatever way feels comfortable to you, closing your eyes, and really just focusing on the breath coming in and the breath going out. Then once you have that, you can set a timer. Maybe you do a minute at first. I find personally, if I'm going to meditate, kind of the minimum effective dose for me, meaning the minimum amount of time that I'm actually going to get a great result is 10 minutes, because it takes me about 5 minutes just to kind of stop shifting around, being jittery, and start to settle into my own body. And once I'm there, then I start to explore what are the things that are weighing me down. How am I relating to those things, right? When we talk about turning our day around, often it is because we have assigned meaning to something outside of ourselves that is that we're relating to it in a way that's disempowering. So there are just a couple of the things that I have in my tool belt that I wanted to share, so that hopefully some of the listeners here today can take those things and they can deploy them when they wake up in the morning and they feel overwhelmed and they're worried they're going to lose the day.
And those are some very powerful tactics. My brother is a big meditator. I run. Some people say that's a form of meditation, so I would just ride with that. I do get my exercise in. I mean, all those are really spot on. It's just about treating your body right, treating your mind right, really taking the time to pause instead of really thrusting yourself into the day. And I feel like the reason we have this idea where we constantly thrust ourselves into the day, we're constantly busy, is because we have so many different things to do, but we don't know what are the most important things for us to do. So I'm wondering, Jordan, if you could share a little bit of how we can get more clarity around what are some of the important things to do, because you could feel busy, but really lose the entire day and not be productive.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So that's one of the things about my app, Focuster, that I haven't tackled yet is getting inside people's heads and figuring out what their priorities should be for them. Uh, that's just a bit of a joke. I don't think any of us want computers to necessarily tell us what goals we should have in our lives, but we can build systems that help us make that decision more easily by surfacing the information that's really relevant about each of those potential priorities. So one of the ways you could look at this, and a way to get instant clarity on your priorities, even if you have an overwhelmingly long to-do list, is to get clarity first on what are your criteria of importance. So this is a system that one of my mentors, Dan Martell, teaches, and this is a system for ranking your potential priorities using a matrix of values. So one of the values that you might want to evaluate is this something that is going to make me money? So if you go down your list and you start making some columns, if you could imagine a spreadsheet, for example, where the first column is, the priority. So maybe it's you need to write a sales a proposal for a project. Maybe the second thing is you want to go have tea with a potential new client, and et cetera, et cetera. So all these, and then on the next column you would have on a scale of 1 to 5. How much will this contribute to making money in my business? The next column could be, will this make a customer happy? So this is a criteria which is also important. And then the third one, is this a repeatable process? Obviously, if you are investing your time into a repeatable process, this would be potentially more valuable than a one-off opportunity. So, and I'm sure when it comes to content marketing, Marc, this is something that's very dear to your heart. You want to ideally create some kind of evergreen content or something that you can keep launching. It's not just a one-off. Would you say that's true?
Yes, definitely. I'm even looking to get deeper with evergreening all the virtual summits that I launch.
Right. So, and this is kind of where one might want to customize a criteria, because for you, you might want to weight, for example, the ability to create something that is evergreen, that's going to be a repeatable process to help your business. That might be weighted higher for you because of that. Some people who are more socially minded might want to have some criteria for that, and then basically what you would want to do is just add up the numbers beside each of those potential priorities, and the ones with the highest numbers would simply move to the top, and those would be the ones to focus on first. Now, is this a perfect system? No, it's not perfect because there's many criteria that is probably going to be outside of your system. So after you do that, you're still going to use a gut check. You're going to say, hey, is this something that does this feel like it should be number one priority or not? So this is just going to help you get through that stuck space. So I hope that's a useful system for people to engage with. I don't have trying to think if I have a reference material. I don't have the reference material right this moment, but if people were interested in it, I would put it together. So if you wanted to email jordan@focuster.com with the subject line priority matrix, I would send that off to you. That's just a special little offer for your audience, Marc.
Thank you for that. That'll be in the show notes.
Yeah. Well, we'll get that in there.
Yeah, I mean, really awesome insights, getting clear on what your definition of priority is, because my priorities look very different from Jordan's, as do your priorities look very different from both of ours. So it's important to get clear on how you define a priority before you go around looking for the priority, because then if you don't define your priorities first, you're just labeling something as a priority and not really knowing if it fits your criteria. So a lot of very interesting insights. But even if we have our priorities straight, it could sometimes be overwhelming. Using the virtual summit example, there are some days where I'm interviewing 10 people and I have to do a few other things for a virtual summit. after all those interviews. So even if you do have your priorities straight, there can be a lot of overwhelm in the day. And I'm wondering, I mean, Jordan, if you could share with us how we can deal with that overwhelm, because we could start the day strong, get overwhelmed, and then lose it in the evening.
Right. So a lot of this has to do with, in my opinion, has to do with depletion of our willpower, which happens throughout the day. So we start our day typically at the peak of our willpower. You know, we get up, we have a lot of energy. This is a great time to do something difficult, perhaps, like go to the gym, go for your run. This is great. And then as your day starts to wear on, you have to make more and more decisions. You have to take more and more challenges on. You have to do more and more emotionally difficult things. Maybe have a difficult conversation. Maybe have to make a final recommendation on something. There's something on the line, and this depletes your willpower over time. There's a lot of studies on this. And so by the end of your day, you're going to be feeling more drained out. And what I found really works well is to front load my day with a lot of the types of the planning activities so that I can minimize the drain on my willpower throughout the afternoon and the drain on my decision-making capability. So one of the ways that I do that is I throw out the traditional concept of the to-do list and instead basically create a plan for the day which is more realistic as to what I could actually get done. And I do this actually in the app. It happens automatically, but you can just do this on a piece of paper, is to write down estimates for how long you think certain things will take, and to make sure that, again, coming back to your priorities, that you're only including the things that are the highest level priority in your day. The way this actually helps your willpower and your decision-making capability is when you look at this list, you're not seeing things that are irrelevant. And you don't have to keep scanning that list up and down and up and down, looking for something to work on next. No, you've actually already organized it in priority order. You're just working through, once you do number one, now you're doing number two. You don't really have to think about what do I do next. You just cross off the next thing, look at what's up after that, and you're not wasting your time trying to decide, should I do this now? Should I do this later? You've already made those decisions in a batch at the very start of your day. So this is one of the things that I find really helps to make sure that I don't get to a place at the end of my day where I'm feeling super drained. Now, if you do get to that place, I think a lot of the same things we talked about on how do we turn around a day that's lost. We can pull a lot of those things out of our tool belt. I would say that one of the things that I see people just do way too much of is consume way too many stimulants, not taking the opportunity to get a little bit of exercise in the afternoon. One of the ways that I really try to stay productive and get some exercise in is if I have a phone meeting, I will often go for a walk while I have the meeting. I know it's brilliant, but it makes a big difference in my personal life to be able to move my body, get some sun, get some fresh air, and it's not taking me any extra time. So this is just an example of one of the ways that I can find synergy when it comes to my personal what my body needs and keeping my productivity at a high level and also getting things done.
And I really like that tip on when you're doing a meeting to walk outside, because you're getting some exercise in and you're still working. I mean, as Jordan said it perfectly, you're not losing any time. I'm wondering if you go a little deeper into, let's say someone does want to exercise, they're looking to find extra time in their day. I know you just mentioned that great example of walking while doing the meeting, but let's say that option isn't there, either because some people, they have a 9-to-5 job, they can't walk out. Other people, maybe they don't have that meeting and they're just busy doing other things. So what would your suggestion be to find any kind of extra time to do some kind of exercise or meditation or something else that will help us win the day?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question, and one of the things I think is interesting about your question is you mentioned finding extra time. So it's not even about finding extra time. We can make extra time. And again, there's some studies on this that show that when you take a nap in the afternoon, you become a lot more productive. So even though it costs you a little bit in time, if you are to rest, whether you I have a little or a comfortable chair in my office that if I'm feeling totally exhausted, I don't try to push through. And unless I have like a deadline that specific day and I really just have to push through. But if I have a choice about it, I'm not just going to push through in a half productive manner, just sitting at my desk, kind of I'm not going to try to get a coffee and put my adrenal glands through torture. No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take a nap. And when I let's say it's a 20-minute nap, I'm going to make that time back so much faster than if I just sat there and tried to push through that. So that's the first point I want to make, is that, you can actually make time by being more efficient. You really will have to experiment with the things that, the different tools that are at your disposal, and see which of them actually do make you more productive, and which of them are just kind of don't really move the needle. So whether it's taking a nap, whether it's, doing a 5-minute meditation, you can fit in, I guess finish saying 10 minutes is my minimum, but actually even a 5-minute in between meetings or activities or whatever, even a minute just to close your eyes, just be like, that was a lot. Maybe you're moving from one type of work to another. It's a great way to just reset your state of mind before you move on to something else. It's like cleaning the chalkboard when you're done with it, so that the next person can have a clean slate, right? So I think that's the main point I'd like to make about your question.
And it's really interesting you mentioned even something like a minute can really make a big difference. And napping is something that I've definitely done. I try to do that at least once a day. But one of the things that I want to ask you is that the only problem I see with a nap is you set the goal to nap for 15 minutes, and then you end up napping for 2 hours. So how can we set a time for how long we nap, but actually get up when the time is up?
Right. Well, I'm actually a huge fan of this app on the App Store. It's been around for ages. It's called Pizizz, P-Z-I-Z-Z. And it is you could just use a timer. First of all, you could use, on your iPhone or your Android phone, just set a timer for 20 minutes or whatever. That's level one. But sometimes I have a hard time relaxing, right? And I call it being wired tired. So I'm wired because maybe I drank caffeine, or maybe I'm stressed and I'm moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour, but I know I'm not operating my best. I'm tired. I feel myself dragging. So I'm wired tired, and sometimes I need a little bit of help to just slow down, drop into myself, and to be able to even relax at all, let alone nap or sleep. So I like this app called Pizizz, P-Z-I-Z-Z. Shout out to Rockwell Shaw, the CEO. He's been sending some interesting notes about the science that they use behind this app. And they have a nap mode in this particular app that I find is super reliable for giving me a power nap. They use hypnotic language, music, and binaural beats, which is kind of a scientific term for using sounds to induce certain brainwave states. And it works for me. I'm usually out within about less than 5 minutes. I'm usually out. And then they bring you back in a gentle way. They bring you back. And if you don't wake up with the gentle way, then they play a louder alarm. But I have found this app is so reliable for me to kind of fit in a half an hour nap. If I'm at a conference and I want to go out for dinner, but I'm exhausted, I'll just, take a 30-minute cat nap and I'll be back at it before you know it.
That is a very interesting app and concept, which will be in the show notes, markguberti.com/E311. Definitely something for me to try, because I got to be able to balance that's definitely something that I sometimes realize I overnapped, but I will definitely try that the next time that I nap. And one of the questions I do want to tackle is, we've talked about how it can turn a day around even if it starts bad. A lot of the insights we gave also help you with having a good day, not just turning a bad one around, but just straight up having a good one. But what do you believe holds most people back from really being able to turn their day around, turn their life around in such a way where they can hit the big goals that they set for themselves?
Well, I mean, we've already talked about overwhelm, right? So overwhelm is a state of, I would say, a lack of prioritization. So, and a state of feeling emotionally disturbed because of having too many demands on your time that seem like they have to all happen at once, when there's only one possible thing you can do in this given moment. There's only one thing you can do right this second. So for me, overwhelm and that state of emotional disintegration and it is one of the main things that keeps me and other people from being productive and actually achieving their goals. Distraction would be the other thing. And I would say that distraction, I mean, the average person, including myself, it gets distracted dozens of times per day. Whether it's a notification on your phone, whether it's an unexpected phone call, whether it is just the impulse to go on YouTube and look up funny videos. These are all distractions from our goals. So one of the things we do with Focuster to minimize the impact of distractions is to give you cues to bring you back to what you need to be working on now. It knows what your priorities are. It knows when you have free time, so that's time that's not otherwise spent on some calendar event that you, maybe a meeting or something like that. So it knows if you're not in a meeting, if you've got open time in your calendar, then you should be working on your next priority. And you get little pop-up reminders periodically to make sure that you're staying on track. And for me, this has been really effective because sometimes I'll be working on something and I'll just be like, oh, I wonder what's happening on Facebook or, and that's like, I know it's the worst thing, that could possibly ever happen. But when you have what I like to call like a digital safety net, something that's going to keep prompting me to say, hey, you're on Facebook, but, wasn't that, wasn't writing this documentation important? Wasn't working on making a video important? And so I keep getting reminders, I have mine set for every 15 minutes because it doesn't hurt me to know what I should be working on every 15 minutes. Of course, you can tweak that. You can turn them off temporarily, all that stuff. So if notifications are getting to be a little bit much, you can do that. But I find this is one of the most effective ways to help your distraction. And you can do the same thing without an app like Focuster. You could do something similar, which is, while you're working, you can set a timer so that every 15 minutes you'll have a little bell that rings or chimes so that you remember that you're working and you remember to give some consideration of what is your priority right now. So you can do this with just a regular timer app on your phone. It's not nearly as good. There's a meditation timer called Insight Timer. That one's great because you can set a 1-hour session to work and you can set a timer bell every 15 minutes. And so that's just one of the methods I would say to deal with distraction. So we've got overwhelm and we've got distraction, which I would say are like the big two reasons why people are not actually achieving their goals from a purely mechanical standpoint. Like, we're not talking about like limiting beliefs and subconscious type behaviors, but I think we'll leave that one to the side for now.
Jordan, thank you for sharing some of those key themes. Definitely ones that we've covered a few times already in this episode, the distraction and just really keeping yourself accountable to doing the goals around you with those timers, whether it's with Focuster or your smartphone timer or anything else. But Focuster definitely being a great app for you to use if you want to boost your productivity. One of the things that can help a lot, though, is continuing to learn, and you're doing a great job with that listening to this episode. But another way you can learn a lot is by reading as many books as possible. And with that in mind, Jordan, I'm wondering if you could share with us 3 books that you believe will have a positive impact on us.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you the book that I've read most recently that has, I would say, really transformed my engagement with learning and education, pretty much everything anyway, is 12 Rules for Life by Jordan Peterson. Are you familiar with that book, Marc?
I am not.
So 12 Rules for Life it's kind of some people have called it a self-help psychology book, but it's a lot deeper than that, and it has kind of 12 core principles that everyone can get some benefit from. Each one is a chapter, but Jordan Peterson, who's a clinical psychologist and a professor from the University of Toronto, has drawn on a lot of different areas like Carl Jung, psychology, evolutionary biology. He looks at things from philosophy, some of the great works of literature, different religions around the world, and he looks at all of these different aspects, which I would describe as character, kind of a deeper cut about how we engage in the world. I started thinking about things like, how do you conduct yourself when no one else is watching? That's an interesting question, right? And it speaks to someone's character, not just what they can get away with, but seeing the bigger picture, and how you behave when no one else is watching can have a profound effect on the life, your life going forward and everyone else's lives as well. So, interesting, fascinating book that has got me interested in discussing these more philosophical and intellectual topics that have very profound practical applications as well. So that's book number 1, 12 Rules for Life, Jordan Peterson. Book number 2, I would say Steven Pinker's book, Enlightenment Now, which is a look at how the Enlightenment values of the Enlightenment period have influenced the world and how they're still relevant today. So a lot of the things that we have taken for granted, like freedom of speech, the legal system, the idea that institutions can help uplift humanity as a whole, a lot of these ideas are Enlightenment values. And some people say it's obsolete, but this book would make the argument that not only is it not obsolete, but the world is not getting worse as many people would think that it is. Pinker explores a lot of the cognitive biases in our brains that cause us to experience the world as getting worse or being very dangerous. One of those things is that our brains are optimized to see disaster, to see potential danger, and that looms much larger than opportunities, right? Our bodies are much more concerned about keeping us alive and looking out for threats to that than to see opportunities and to see the good things in life. And so the rest of the book, he really looks at how people's lives have been transformed dramatically from living in poverty with no access to healthcare, education, food, clean water. He looks at many, many, many other dimensions and shows how things have improved in the last 100 years, in the last 50 years, in the last 20 years. In the last 30 years, for example, the number of people living in extreme poverty in the world has dropped from somewhere like 30% in the 1990s to below 10% in the current day. And so this is something that, we don't think about all that much. It's not like there's a headline in the newspaper every day that says, another 150,000 people were lifted out of extreme poverty yesterday, just like yesterday and the day before that, for the last 30 years. It's kind of a boring headline because it's just good news. It's the same good news. The forests are not being destroyed. If you look at the world as a whole, in fact, we are starting to reforest the world. So don't fall into the trap of pessimism, and check out Steven Pinker's book, Enlightenment Now. Those would be 2 books. Hopefully I didn't go too long on them, but as you can tell, I'm excited about the books.
I mean, those are really great book recommendations, which will be in the show notes, markguberti.com/E311. We'll also throw in content marketing secrets in there for anyone who wants to grow their content brands and monetize their content. So those will be in the show notes. Before we wrap up this episode, though, Jordan, I'm wondering if you could share with us one question you believe we need to be asking ourselves more often. I know you shared that question earlier about how do we conduct ourselves when no one else is watching, but I'm wondering if you could throw in one more question for us to ponder as well.
Yeah, I would say as an entrepreneur and as somebody who wants to keep being effective, it's like the question is, what is the highest leverage thing that I can be working on right now? Is the question that I would ask.
Jordan, thank you so much for sharing with us that great question and all the great insights throughout our time together. If you guys want to learn more about Jordan, there's a very simple way. Focuster.com. Get the app, boost your productivity, take your business to the next level. Jordan, I can't thank you enough for coming on the Breakthrough Success podcast. It was such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Mark, and I hope that everyone who's listening got a breakthrough. Thanks, guys.
Want to dominate the podcasting industry? Now you can with your free copy of my book, Podcast Domination. You'll learn how to launch, grow, and monetize your very own show. And whether you are a beginner or an expert, this book has a lot of golden nuggets for you. We'll cover the cost of producing this book. All we ask is that you cover the shipping. To get your copy, head over to markguberti.com/PD.